The June sun blazed unforgivingly, flooding the quiet waiting room of a private fertility clinic in downtown Denver, Colorado. Rachel Monroe nervously twisted the corner of her test results in her hands, trying not to glance at the clock. Her husband, Tyler, was supposed to be back any moment now, carrying his own envelope. After 5 years of marriage, they had become all too familiar with this exhausting routine, between home, work, and yet another sterile consultation room. The doctor's words from just half an hour earlier still echoed painfully in her mind. "Mrs. Monroe, you have to understand, your body simply isn't prepared to carry a child." She had added that there were still a few treatment options they could attempt, but honestly, the chances were slim. At 32, Rachel looked younger than her age. A petite woman with wide hazel eyes that now brimmed with tears. She worked as an accountant at a local grocery chain, held a degree, a stable job, and a loving husband. Everything seemed perfect on paper, until fate decided otherwise. The door creaked open. Tyler stepped in, holding a white envelope. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with light brown hair and an athletic frame, almost the opposite of Rachel's fragile appearance. As a high school PE teacher, he was the definition of energy and optimism. But not today. His face was gray. "Well?" Rachel asked quietly, though she could already read the answer in his eyes. "I'm fine. Everything's fine on my end," he said, slowly sinking into the seat beside her. "And you?" Rachel shook her head. Her lips quivered. The tears finally spilled over. "I can't have kids," she choked out. "I'll never be able to give you a child." "Rachel," he reached out to comfort her. She pulled away. "No," she said sharply. "You don't get it. This is my fault. We can't have a family because of me." Outside, the city buzzed. Cars honked, air conditioners hummed, people moved on with their lives. Inside, silence clung to the room like heat. Rachel stared out the window, watching moms with strollers, kids with ice cream, and pregnant women glowing with joy. It felt like the world was mocking her. "Let's go home," Tyler finally said. They left the clinic without another word. The heat outside was unbearable, but Rachel barely felt it. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them bringing peace. She thought of her best friend, Melissa, who had just had her second baby. How could she even look her in the eye now? Their apartment was in a new development on the city's edge, a 3-bedroom they had bought on credit 3 years ago, one of which was supposed to be the nursery. Now, it stood empty. A silent reminder of everything they couldn't have. "Want to order pizza?" Tyler offered, trying to lighten the mood. No, Rachel walked into their bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. "I need to be alone." Tyler sighed and disappeared into the kitchen. She heard him turn on the kettle, pull out mugs, then slam a cabinet door hard enough to rattle the walls. "Why?" he muttered. "Why the hell does life have to be so unfair? They did everything right. Married for love, worked hard, built a future. And now this." In the bedroom, Rachel scrolled through her Instagram feed. Photos of Melissa and her kids. First her son Caleb, and now baby girl Lily. Every image felt like a knife. She was happy for her friend, truly, but it hurt like hell. Melissa was everything Rachel wasn't. Tall, confident, effortlessly beautiful. She owned her own hair salon, ran marathons, had 2 kids, and a husband, Ryan, who adored her. They had a simple life, but a full one. Rachel's phone buzzed. "Melissa." She ignored the call, then switched her phone to silent. She couldn't. Not right now. Not her cheerful voice. Not baby stories. Rachel needed space, to grieve, to process, to breathe. From the kitchen came the familiar scent of coffee. Tyler always brewed a pot when he was stressed. Rachel's mind drifted back to the night they met, 6 years ago, at a friend's wedding. She had just landed a job at a local bank. He was a fresh hire at the high school. There was a spark instantly. 1 year later, they were married. Everyone said they were the perfect couple. For 2 years, they traveled, made their apartment a home, dreamed big. And then, they decided they were ready for a baby. At first, it didn't worry them. But months passed. Then a year. And soon, worry turned to fear. Tests. Appointments. Endless treatments. Savings vanished. They even took out another loan. Rachel tried every old wives' tale she could find. Nothing worked. And now, the final verdict. Their marriage, once a fortress, was starting to crack. Rachel could feel it. Tyler wanted kids. He lit up around them, the way he played with Melissa's son, or his students at school. Would he be able to live with never being a father? The next few weeks were a nightmare. They barely spoke. Couldn't even look at each other. Evenings passed in separate rooms, she in the bedroom, lost in mindless scrolling, he in the living room, staring blankly at the news, where yet another story of school violence or political chaos filled the air. Even the most basic things became arguments. Dishes in the sink. An unmade bed. Socks on the floor. Sparks of irritation burst into cold silence. Rachel stayed late at work, drowning herself in spreadsheets to avoid going home. Tyler picked up extra hours coaching after school. They were drifting. And neither one knew how to fix it. It had been almost 2 weeks since the clinic visit, and Rachel couldn't remember the last time she and Tyler had had a real conversation. Words had become fragile things, too sharp, too dangerous. Their apartment, once filled with laughter and weekend music, now echoed with silence and the occasional clink of dishes or hum of the TV. Tyler slept on the couch most nights. Not because they fought, but because not talking at all felt safer than trying. Rachel would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had unraveled so quickly. Wondering if love was supposed to hurt like this when it broke. One evening, while the heat outside still clung to the windows, the doorbell rang. Rachel opened it to find Melissa standing there with a big grocery bag and a concerned look on her face. She wore a loose blue sundress that fluttered in the warm breeze, her hair pulled into a messy bun that somehow still looked perfect. "You haven't answered my calls in 2 weeks," Melissa said, stepping inside like she always had. "I was starting to worry." She moved through the kitchen like she lived there, placing the bag on the counter and pulling out containers of homemade food, cherry turnovers, Rachel's favorite. Then she filled the kettle, found 2 mugs, and turned on the stove. Rachel sat at the table, her throat tight. The tears came fast. She couldn't hold them anymore. In minutes, she spilled it all, about the diagnosis, the finality of the doctor's words, the unraveling silence in their home, and her deepest fear that Tyler wouldn't stay. That he couldn't. Melissa didn't interrupt. She poured the tea, pushed a box of tissues across the table, and when the time felt right, reached across and held Rachel's trembling hand. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said softly. "There are other ways. Surrogacy. Adoption. Treatments abroad, maybe. You don't have to give up just yet." Rachel didn't answer, but in that moment, when the steam rose from their mugs and Melissa's voice wrapped around her like a blanket, she felt something flicker deep in her chest. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe the idea of hope. That night, they talked for hours. About motherhood. About grief. About how fragile dreams can be. Rachel listened more than she spoke, letting the words settle into the cracks inside her. When Melissa finally left, the evening breeze had cooled the air just enough to make it breathable. Rachel stood by the window, watching the city lights blink into existence. Somewhere nearby, a baby cried. A dog barked. Life kept going. The next morning, she woke with something unfamiliar, purpose. She wanted to talk to Tyler. To really talk. Maybe they could still find a way to survive this together. But when she came home from work that day, the apartment was silent. Too silent. She dropped her keys on the counter and noticed the note on the kitchen table. Tyler's handwriting. A single sentence. "I need some time to think. I'm staying with my parents." The words hit harder than any argument ever could. He hadn't even tried to talk to her before leaving. Rachel sank to the floor, her work bag slipping from her shoulder. Her chest heaved, but no sound came. Just silent sobs, curled against the cabinet door like a child. The phone buzzed. "Melissa, again." Rachel answered with a voice she barely recognized. "He left," she whispered. Melissa paused. "I'm coming over." No. The kids are sick. Stay home. I needed someone to know. They talked for almost an hour. Melissa tried to reassure her, men process this differently. He just needs space. It doesn't mean it's over. But days passed. Then a week. Then another. Tyler didn't come home. His texts were short. Polite. Empty. When Rachel finally visited his parents' house, his mother opened the door with a tight smile and weary eyes. He's at work, she said, though it was Saturday. He's been keeping busy. Rachel nodded. She could feel the judgment in the air, thick like smoke. His mother had always wanted grandchildren. Rachel rode the bus back home in silence, watching the city blur past. Moms pushing strollers. Families eating ice cream. The cruel contrast between their smiles and her grief made the summer sun feel suffocating. Melissa kept trying, inviting her over, offering to take her for walks with the kids, even suggesting Rachel come stay with them for a while. But she couldn't. She couldn't sit in their bright, perfect kitchen and watch Melissa cradle her newborn while her son built castles out of Legos. She couldn't smile at Ryan across the dinner table and pretend her own marriage wasn't falling apart. Every part of her screamed, "You don't belong here anymore." So she stayed in the apartment. The too big, too quiet apartment. And waited. By the third week of silence, the loneliness in Rachel's apartment had started to take shape, like smoke curling into corners, hanging over every untouched mug, every empty chair. She'd stopped cooking real meals. What was the point, when it was just her? She lost track of how many nights she fell asleep scrolling through her phone, watching strangers' lives that still seemed intact. On one of those nights, she came across Melissa's Instagram story. Just a casual photo, her son, Caleb, napping on the couch, and newborn Lily curled up on her chest. Her caption, "Nothing better than this kind of peace." Rachel stared at it for a long time. She wasn't angry. Not really. Just hollow. Then came the knock. Melissa again. This time, no groceries, just herself, in yoga pants and a tired smile. "I figured you wouldn't answer if I called," she said, stepping inside. "So I came anyway." Rachel didn't stop her. They sat on the couch in silence for a while. Then Rachel finally said, "He hasn't even tried to talk to me." Melissa nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He's hurting too." Rachel looked at her. "How do you know?" There was a pause. Slight. Just enough. "I saw him," Melissa said. "At the park." He looked lost. Rachel didn't ask why she hadn't mentioned that earlier. Melissa leaned back, her gaze fixed on the window. "Ryan's been working late a lot. The salon's been slow. Sometimes I think the whole world's just unraveling." There was something different in her tone. Rachel couldn't name it, only felt it. A shift. A weight. That night, after Melissa left, Rachel sat at the dining table and opened her laptop. She searched things she never thought she'd need: how to grieve a living person. Can marriage survive infertility? Surrogacy laws in Colorado. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she made a list. Talk to a therapist. Go back to yoga. Pick up that old freelance accounting project. Do something. Anything. Just move. A few days later, she caught the scent of fresh coffee and realized it had come from Melissa's salon. She stopped at the window. Inside, Tyler was sitting in one of the chairs. He looked thinner. His usual smile was gone. And Melissa was there too, trimming his hair, laughing at something he said. Rachel couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. She walked away. That night, she called her mom for the first time in months. The conversation was clumsy, but warm. Her mother didn't ask about Tyler, just talked about the garden, the heat, the peaches coming in early. "You sound tired," she said gently. "I am," Rachel whispered. "But I'm still here." The heat had barely broken when Rachel decided to stop by the market near Melissa's salon. It wasn't planned, just a spontaneous decision to get fresh fruit. Something to remind her she was alive. The bell over the shop door jingled as she stepped inside. A blast of cool air hit her face, bringing instant relief. She moved through the aisles slowly, picking out peaches, trying not to think too much. But fate doesn't wait for convenient moments. She turned the corner into the checkout lane, and froze. Melissa. And Tyler. Together. Not across from each other. Not in a friendly, distant way. Side by side. Too close. Whispering. Melissa reached up to brush something from his shirt. Tyler laughed, the laugh Rachel hadn't heard in weeks. Melissa's hand lingered a second too long on his arm. Time stopped. Rachel's breath caught so violently in her throat, she dropped the peach in her hand. It thudded on the tile, rolled beneath the shelves. Neither of them noticed. She backed out of the aisle and rushed outside, her chest heaving, sweat beading on her upper lip despite the air conditioning. She stood on the curb, stunned. Cars passed. Horns honked. Somewhere, a child was crying. Her phone buzzed. Melissa, hey. Are you okay? Thought I saw you just now. Rachel didn't answer. She walked. 4 hours. Through unfamiliar neighborhoods, down sunburnt sidewalks. Her thoughts spiraled so quickly they turned to noise. Later that night, her phone rang again. Ryan. Melissa's husband. She let it ring. Then the voicemail played. Rachel. I think you should know something. I've been avoiding this, but I can't anymore. Melissa and Tyler. I saw them. In the park. Kissing. I confronted her. She didn't deny it. Rachel dropped the phone. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stumbled to the couch and sank into it, curling up like a child. How long had it been going on? Had it started while she was still fighting for their marriage? While she was telling Melissa everything? The betrayal split her in half. Tyler. The man who once whispered dreams against her skin. Melissa. The friend who sat in her kitchen and cried with her over tea. Rachel barely slept that night. She opened her wedding album, not out of nostalgia, but rage. She ripped page after page, not caring about the pieces falling around her feet. By morning, the floor was covered in the confetti of a life she no longer lived. She stood barefoot in the ruins, stunned by the quiet. Somewhere beneath the pain, something else stirred. Not hope. Not yet. But a spark. Something primal. Something sharp. Anger. Rachel didn't remember getting dressed. She only realized she was outside when her bare arms caught the breeze. She walked for miles again, this time not in confusion, but with a dangerous clarity in her chest. She needed to do something. Anything. Something real. The next morning, she deleted every photo of Tyler and Melissa off her phone. She blocked both their numbers. When Melissa sent a long email titled, "Please read this," Rachel didn't open it. She deleted it without a second thought. She spent the rest of the day cleaning. Not just tidying, but purging. She cleared drawers, boxed clothes, tossed wedding souvenirs into a black trash bag and shoved it onto the balcony. She rearranged the furniture. Bought new sheets. It wasn't about moving on. It was about reclaiming space. Her space. At sunset, she took her first photo in weeks, a simple shot of her living room, now minimal, sunlight streaking across the hardwood floor. She posted it with one word, mine. And then she turned off her phone. She didn't cry that night. The next week, she showed up early to therapy. I don't want to talk about them, she told her therapist. I want to talk about me. She began taking walks again. Small ones. Sometimes to the bakery. Sometimes just to the park with a book. Once, she walked past the same bench where she and Tyler used to sit and talk about baby names. She paused, let the memory sting, then kept walking. One evening, she got a text from Ryan. Ryan, just checking in. I hope you're okay. I'm sorry for everything. She stared at it for a while, then replied, thank you. You didn't deserve it either. He sent a heart emoji. She didn't reply. But it didn't make her angry. It made her feel seen. A few days later, she bumped into him in the grocery store. He looked tired, like her. They stood in the freezer aisle talking about nothing, new yogurt flavors, the heat wave, how fast the summer was flying by. It was easy. Gentle. Before leaving, he said, "If you ever want to talk. I mean, for real, I'm around." She nodded. "Maybe I'll take you up on that." Back at home, Rachel took a long shower, letting the steam fog the mirror. Afterward, she caught a glimpse of herself. Still thin. Still tired. But there was something new in her face, sharpness in the eyes, steadiness in the jaw. The kind of strength that doesn't come from victory, but survival. She poured herself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony, where the trash bag of her old life still sat. She took it in both hands, walked to the dumpster, and let it go. The bag hit the bottom with a soft thud. Rachel didn't look down. She turned and walked home. August was almost over. The morning started cooler. Birds louder. Coffee tasted more bitter, maybe because Rachel had stopped adding sugar. She was learning how to sit with silence without letting it crush her. She started journaling again. Just a few lines each night. Sometimes it was poetry. Sometimes a list of things she wanted to forget. Sometimes a single word repeated 10 times until it lost its meaning. She rejoined the gym. Signed up for a grief support group. Booked a haircut. And she kept running into Ryan. First at the coffee shop near the park. Then again at the library. They weren't planned, but they didn't feel accidental either. Each time, their conversations grew longer. Less awkward. One Saturday morning, they sat on a bench near the community garden, sipping cold brews and talking about music. It was the first time she laughed, really laughed, since June. Ryan looked at her and said, "You still have that fire in you." She looked away. Feels like smoke most days. Even smoke means something burned. Something mattered. She didn't know what to say to that. Fall arrived early that year. Mornings were brisk, the sky stretched wide and pale. Rachel bought herself a pair of boots and didn't tell anyone. She started wearing red lipstick again, not because she wanted to be noticed, but because she didn't care if she was. Her life became quieter, sharper. Work. Books. Walks. Silence she chose, not the kind that was forced on her. And then one Wednesday evening, as she was watering the dying basil on her windowsill, a knock came. She froze. Not because she was afraid, but because part of her already knew. She opened the door. Tyler. Thinner. Paler. A man holding a small envelope. "Hi," he said, voice cracked. She didn't answer. "I'm not here to ruin your peace," he said. "I just wanted you to have this." He handed her the envelope and stepped back. "I'm sorry. For everything." Rachel didn't invite him in. She watched him walk away, down the hallway, down the stairs. Inside, she held the envelope for a long time. Then she opened it. Inside, a letter. Short. Handwritten. "Rachel. You have every reason to hate me. But I want you to know something. Melissa lost the baby. She's in therapy. I'm staying with my sister. It wasn't love. I don't even know what it was. I think I was just trying to escape something I couldn't face in myself. You were never the problem. You were the only thing real in my life. And I ruined it. There's nothing I'm asking for. Just. I thought you should know. Tyler." Rachel folded the letter carefully. She didn't cry. She stood by the window and looked at the fading evening sky. The basil wouldn't make it through the season. But something else might. She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. Sometimes, the apology comes too late. But peace doesn't. She smiled. A real one. Then she went to bed early and slept all the way through the night. Later that afternoon, she received a message request on Facebook, from someone named Marlene Turner. "Hi Rachel. I don't know if you remember me. I used to teach 4th grade with Tyler. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing okay. I saw something today and it felt wrong not to reach out. Rachel clicked on Marlene's profile. There, buried in a weekend photo album, was an image that made her blood run cold. Melissa. At what looked like a baby shower. Very pregnant. Tyler behind her, one hand on her stomach, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Rachel stared at the screen, breath stuck in her throat. They hadn't even waited. She closed the laptop without saving the photo. Walked into the kitchen. Poured herself water. Her hands didn't shake this time. That night, she sat on the floor of her apartment, legs crossed, arms resting on her knees. And she breathed. Not deeply. Not with ease. But she breathed. Tomorrow she would show up for work. And therapy. And herself. And that would be enough.